The starfield and the main viewport of the Galactic Imperium flagship, the Worldbreaker, rippled and parted. The blue-green marble of Earth hung in the void, serene and unguarded. On the bridge, Harold Vexler felt a familiar surge of cold satisfaction. His assessment, based on the galaxy's intelligence, seemed correct. No orbital defenses. Energy signatures consistent with primitive fission and fusion. The planet was a soft, ripe fruit, ready to be plucked. Establish high orbit. Full passive sensor sweep, Vexler commanded, his voice a low hum. He was tall, his skin a shade of polished gray, and his eyes held the weight of centuries of unchallenged authority. The Imperium had not been refused in 1,000 years. They did not expect a refusal today. Below, on Earth, the signal of the Worldbreaker's arrival had triggered not panic, but a meticulously prepared sequence. In a secure bunker deep beneath the Alps, Ambassador Kim Yuna watched the feed. She was a woman with a calm, thoughtful face and eyes that missed very little. Next to her stood Major Lee Ji-hun, his posture relaxed, but his gaze fixed on the colossal ship now dominating the orbital feeds. Showtime, Dr. Park Tae-min said from his console, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface. Mimic field is active at 100%. Their passive scans are seeing exactly what we want them to see. Yuna nodded. Good. Initiate Welcome Protocol Alpha. Remember, everyone, politeness is the priority. On the surface, in a designated landing zone, outside of what was once Brussels, a platform gleamed under the sun. It was a stage carefully set. Around it, human delegations from every nation stood, flags waving gently in the breeze. They looked up, their faces a mixture of awe and nervousness. The performance had begun. The Worldbreaker did not send a shuttle. It projected a beam of solid light, a transit corridor that deposited Vexler and his honor guard directly onto the platform in a flash of silent energy. The display was meant to intimidate, to showcase a technology so advanced it seemed like magic. The Imperium soldiers were clad in armor that seemed to drink in the light, and they carried weapons that hummed with contained power. Vexler stepped forward, his eyes sweeping over the crowd with detached curiosity. He saw a species divided into countless tribes, wearing varied fabrics, their bodies soft and unenhanced. He saw no unified genetic signature, no psychic aura worth noting. Just noise and fragility. Then Kim Yuna walked forward. She wore a simple, dark suit, a subtle pin of a united Earth on her lapel. She offered a small, formal bow, a universal gesture of greeting she knew the Imperium's translators would understand. Harold Vexler, on behalf of the people of Earth, I welcome you to our home. We are honored by your visit. Her voice was clear, translated in real time by a small device on her collar. Vexler looked down at her. The honor was, of course, all hers. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of his head. Your greeting is noted. Speaker for Earth. I am Harold Vexler, second voice of the Galactic Imperium. You will provide us with full access to your planetary data nets, your historical archives, and your population centers for assessment. It was not a request. Yuna's smile remained, polite and unflinching. Of course. We have anticipated your needs. We have prepared a cultural exchange program. Our history is rich, if brief. Our art, our music, we believe they speak to a shared experience. We would be delighted to share it with you. Vexler almost snorted. Art, music, the preoccupations of a child race. Your cultural offerings are secondary. The Imperium assesses practical utility, military capacity, resource output, social cohesion. We understand, Yuna said smoothly, gesturing to a man who stepped forward. This is Major Lee Ji-hun. He will act as your primary liaison for any practical surveys. He and his team are at your disposal. Ji-hun bowed, just as Yuna had. He was fit, but by Imperium standards, he looked unremarkable. His uniform was neat, his expression one of attentive neutrality. Vexler's psychic senses brushed against him, finding only the surface chatter of a disciplined, but ordinary, military mind. No hidden aggression, no deep-seated power. Just polite obedience. Very well, Vexler said. We will begin with your major population hubs and your data archives. Do not attempt to hide anything. Our scans are thorough. We would not dream of it, Yuna replied. Transparency is the foundation of trust. Please, this way. We have ground transport prepared. Ground transport. How quaint. Vexler and his guard followed, their armored boots clanking on the pavement. They were loaded into large, wheeled vehicles. The humans called them buses. As they drove towards the nearby city, Vexler looked out the window. He saw buildings of steel and glass, vehicles crowding roads, humans going about their lives. The scans from the Worldbreaker fed constant data to his implants. Energy consumption, moderate. Weapons signatures, crude projectile and directed energy weapons, centuries behind Imperial standard. Biological readings, baseline, with high incidences of genetic disorder and cellular decay. Social scans indicated thousands of conflicting belief systems, political divisions, and regional disputes. It was exactly as the galaxy's briefings had said. Humanity was a mess. A noisy, creative, disorganized mess, barely out of its technological infancy. Their greatest achievement seemed to be not destroying themselves yet. The tour was a carefully curated illusion. They were taken to the Grand Place in Brussels, where guides spoke of history and architecture. They visited a museum, where human art was displayed. Vexler saw paintings of war and peace, sculptures of anguish and joy. It was emotional, undisciplined. They were shown a fusion power plant, a clean, impressive facility, but one the Imperium had surpassed before humanity had discovered fire. At every stop, Yuna was the perfect host. She answered questions with apparent honesty, offered refreshments, and deflected any probing about global unity with talk of celebrating diverse perspectives. Ji-hun and his team were shadows, facilitating, never interfering. They seemed almost invisible. That evening, in a temporary embassy, Vexler convened with his science officer. The scans are conclusive, Herald, the officer reported. Their technology is derivative and limited. Their military structures are fragmented. We detected minor psychic potential in a handful of subjects, but it is untrained and weak, little more than heightened intuition. They possess no shielding against a true psychic assault. Their planet is rich in resources they barely utilize efficiently. And their demeanor? Vexler asked, excessively deferential. Their major, Ji-hun, accepted a minor psychic probe from Enforcer Kaval without resistance. He reported only a slight headache. They lack the warrior's pride. They are polite to a fault. Vexler looked at a screen showing a live feed of Earth at night, the continents speckled with light. A pretty, fragile bauble. He had seen this 100 times. The pattern was always the same. Initial curiosity, then assessment, then integration. Some species fought and were broken. Most, like these humans, simply acquiesced. Their politeness was the politeness of the weak, who knew their place. He made his decision. Prepare the preliminary integration report. Classification. Client race, category Gamma. Non-threatening, suitable for cultural preservation and light manual labor. Their United Earth Council will be allowed to remain as a local administrative unit under our oversight. He opened a channel to the Worldbreaker. The assessment proceeds. The species is compliant. Stand by for formal declaration of annexation. Back in the Alpine bunker, Yuna, Jian, and Tae Min reviewed the day's data. They took the bait, Tae Min said, a grin spreading across his face. The mimic field worked perfectly. They think our power grid is a joke, and our best weapons are museum pieces. Their psychic scans? Yuna asked. Superficial, as predicted, Jihan replied, his hand unconsciously touching the spot on his temple where the probe had been administered. They felt the surface. They didn't look deeper. They saw the headache I was supposed to have. Yuna looked at the feed of the World Breaker, a dark silhouette against the moon. Good. They've confirmed their own biases. They see only what they expect to see, a divided, primitive, and polite species. She turned to her colleagues, her calm expression hardening just a fraction. Let them enjoy their certainty for a little while longer. Keep the protocol running. Be impeccably, perfectly polite. Right up until the moment they give us no other choice. The Imperium's assessment shifted from observation to intrusion. Under the guise of a comprehensive survey, Harold Vexler's demands grew. He wanted to see the heart of human industry, our deepest historical records, our most crowded cities. Ambassador Kim Yuna continued to smile, to nod, to grant every request with a calm. Of course. Right this way. Major Lee Jihan was the one who had to make it happen. He escorted squads of Imperium soldiers, their gray armor and humming weapons, a stark contrast to his own simple uniform, through human spaces. His team, a man named Choi Min-soo and a woman named Kang Soo-jin, were just as quiet and efficient as he was. They were shadows, opening doors, arranging transport, saying little. The Imperium troops scanned everything. They marched through an automotive factory in Germany, their sensors pinging over the assembly lines building wheeled vehicles. The lead enforcer, a brute named Keval, who had probed Jihan, snorted. You move materials by rolling on the ground? How primitive. Jihan just nodded. It is efficient for our needs. They were given access to digital archives, a carefully prepared slice of human history. It showed our wars, our disasters, our political struggles in stark detail. Dr. Park Tae-min had curated it himself. Let them see the chaos, he had said. It will make the picture complete. The Imperium analysts reviewed the data and saw proof of a violently divided species, always fighting amongst itself. But the real test came in Seoul. Vex, Lore wanted to observe a population center under stress. A protest had been organized in Gwanghwamun Square. It was not a random event. The people were demonstrating against the Imperium's presence, holding signs that said, "Respect our sovereignty and galactic friendship, not domination." Their anger was real, but their placement and timing were not an accident. Jihan stood at the edge of the square, with Enforcer Keval and 2 other Imperium soldiers. The crowd was loud, passionate, but orderly. Keval watched with disdain. See how they waste energy on noise? No unity. No discipline. An elderly man, his face lined with years, stepped forward. He held a simple sign painted by hand. He did not shout. He just stood silently in front of the Imperium party, blocking their sensors' view. Keval's patience, thin at the best of times, snapped. Move, organic, he growled. His translated voice metallic and harsh. The old man did not move. He looked at Keval, his eyes steady. With a casual backhand, Keval shoved him. The man was not heavy, but the force was meant to humiliate, to hurt. The old man stumbled, his legs giving way. He never hit the ground. Jihan moved. There was no blur, no dramatic speed that would trigger Imperial sensors. It was just a sudden, impossible change in position. One moment he was 2 meters away. The next he was there, his arm supporting the old man, gently setting him back on his feet. The crowd gasped. The Imperium soldiers stiffened, their weapons humming to a higher pitch. Ji-hun stood between the old man and Kaval. His face was a mask of polite neutrality. "This citizen meant no harm," Ji-hun said, his voice level. "There is no need for physical force." Kaval was furious. This soft, polite creature had just defied him. In front of a crowd, he saw the old man's sign on the ground. He crushed it under his boot. Then he looked at Ji-hun's face, at the calm, respectful expression. It felt like an insult. "You interfere with an imperial assessment," Kaval hissed. He unclipped a device from his belt. It was not a lethal weapon. It was a force whip, a tool for punishment and control. A thin, crackling line of blue energy snapped to life. "You will learn your place?" In Ji-hun's ear, a tiny receiver played the calm, clear voice of Ambassador Yuna. "Major, do not escalate. Let it happen. Hold the line." Ji-hun did not blink. He did not raise his hands. He simply stood straight, his eyes locked on Kaival's. The message was clear. "I will not fight you, but I will not look away." With a crack that split the air, Kaival brought the whip across Ji-hun's left cheek. The sound was sickening. The smell of burnt flesh filled the space around them. The crowd cried out in horror. A vicious, glowing red line seared itself from Ji-hun's temple to his jaw. The pain must have been incredible. Kai-hun's head snapped to the side from the impact. But his feet did not move. Slowly, he turned his head back to face Kaival. He did not grimace. He did not cry out. A single muscle twitched in his jaw. His eyes, however, changed. The polite neutrality was gone, replaced by a depth as cold and hard as space itself. For a second, Kaival felt a primal chill, a predator's sense that it was not looking at prey, but at something that was choosing, consciously, not to be a predator in return. Then it was gone. Ji-hun's face smoothed back into its empty, polite shell. He said nothing. Kaval, unsettled, powered down the whip. The show of dominance felt hollow. He had expected fear, submission, tears. He had received nothing. "Do not interfere again," he muttered, turning away. Ji-hun remained standing as the Imperium soldiers moved on. Kang Soo-jin was suddenly at his side, a small medical kit in her hand. Her own face was a controlled mask of anger. "Sir, let me." "Later," Ji-hun said, his voice a low, tight monotone. He took the offered antiseptic wipe, but did not use it. The wound on his face was an angry, blistering mark. He turned to the old man, who was being helped by others. "Please get him to safety. The demonstration is over for today." Back in the Alpine Command Center, the feed from Ji-hun's hidden body cam showed the whole event. Dr. Taemin slammed his fist on a console. "That gray-skinned bastard," he whispered. Ambassador Yuna watched, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She saw the whip crack, saw Ji-hun take the blow without flinching. Her heart pounded, but her breathing remained steady. She had given the order. It was necessary. "Biometrics?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Elevated pain response, obviously," Taemin said, pulling up data. "But his physiological control, it's off the charts." Adrenaline was spiked and immediately suppressed. The cellular repair around the wound is already initiating. It will look like a bad burn that heals quickly, not what it really is. And the main sensor sweep from the world breaker during the incident? Yuna pressed. "They saw exactly what we broadcasted," Tamien confirmed. A minor altercation. A human soldier showing foolish bravery and being punished for it. No abnormal energy signatures. No hidden biological reactions. The mimic field ate the real data and spit out the story they wanted. Yuna nodded slowly. The cost of the lie was written on Ji-hun's face. But the lie was holding. The Imperium's final report was being written at this very moment, based on days of seeing exactly what they believed. A weak, divided species with no stomach for real conflict. On the Worldbreaker, Harold Vexler reviewed the incident report from Kaval. A video clip showed the human major being struck and not fighting back. The report concluded, subject displayed negligible combat instinct. Prefers to absorb punishment rather than defend honor. Species-wide psychological profile confirms high agreeableness, low aggression. Recommendation. Client race classification remains Gamma. They will offer no meaningful resistance to integration. Vexler approved the report. The last of his doubts vanished. Humanity was not just weak. It was docile. Their politeness was not a strategy. It was their nature. In a quiet medical room in Seoul, Kang Soo-jin finally applied a regenerating gel to Ji-hun's cheek. The blistering was already fading. That's going to be gone in a few hours, sir. You know that. Ji-hun stared at the wall. The cold fire she had seen in his eyes was banked, hidden again. The scar isn't the point, Soo-jin. The message is. What message? That we'll just stand here and take it? For now, Ji-hun said, finally looking at her. The message is that we can take it. That we have a limit. And they have no idea where it is. He touched his cheek, the skin already smoothing under his fingers. They think they just tested our strength. They only tested our patience. The summons arrived 12 hours after the incident in the square. It was not a request, but a command, transmitted on an open frequency that every human government could hear. Harold Vexler of the Galactic Imperium required the immediate presence of Ambassador Kim Yuna aboard the Worldbreaker to receive their final judgment. In her office in the Alps. Yuna read the message. She felt a strange calm. The waiting was over. She changed into a fresh, formal suit, the same simple cut as before. Dr. Park Tae-min watched her, his usual humor gone. You're walking into the lion's den, Yuna. They could just keep you there. A hostage. They won't, Yuna said, checking her collar pin. They see no threat. A hostage is only valuable if the other side is capable of fighting for them. They believe we are not. She looked at him. Is the channel to Ji-hun secure? Always. We'll hear every word. Good. Maintain the mimic field at maximum. Let them see only our peaceful, primitive world. Right until the moment they don't. The solid light transit beam felt like being dissolved and reassembled. One moment Yuna was in the Alpine complex. The next she was standing on the vast, cavernous bridge of the Worldbreaker. The air was cold and smelled of ozone and something metallic. The scale was overwhelming. Gray-clad officers worked at consoles that glowed with alien script. In the center of the room, on a raised platform, stood Harold Vexler. He looked larger here, more imposing, surrounded by the proof of his power. Ambassador Yuna, he said, not moving to greet her. The assessment of your world is complete. Yuna walked forward, her steps echoing. She stopped at a respectful distance and gave her same polite bow. We await your findings, Harold. We hope for a future of mutual understanding. Vexler almost smiled. It was a thin, cruel expression. Understanding is not a requirement. Compliance is. He gestured, and a massive hologram of Earth sprang to life between them. The Galactic Imperium has governed this arm of the galaxy for 1,000 years. We bring order. We bring progress. Your species, while primitive, shows a basic usefulness. Your planet will be integrated into the Imperium as a client world, classification Gamma. Yuna nodded slowly, as if considering a complex trade agreement. Integration. Could you elaborate on the terms? Terms are not negotiated, Vexler stated flatly. They are declared. Your existing political structures will be dissolved. The United Earth Council will become a regional administrative unit, answering to an imperial overseer. A quarterly tithe of biological and mineral resources will be established. Most significantly, he paused, letting the weight build. To ensure stability and to spread your species' useful traits, a population transfer will begin immediately. 25% of your population will be relocated to other imperial worlds for labor allocation. A cold knot tightened in Yuna's stomach, but her face remained a placid pool. They weren't just asking for submission. They were asking for slavery and dismemberment. They would break families, rip people from their homes, scatter humanity across the stars as property. This was the true face of their order. "I see," Yuna said, her voice still calm. "And if we find these conditions difficult to accept?" Vexler's eyes narrowed. He had expected pleading, not questions. "There is no if. This is the destiny of every species we encounter. Some have refused. The results are etched into the asteroids of their home systems." He leaned forward slightly. "You are not in a position to refuse. Your technology is a toy. Your people are divided. Your soldier in the square could not even defend his own face. What resistance could you possibly offer?" Yuna was silent for a long moment. She looked at the hologram of Earth, so beautiful, so fragile from this vantage point. She thought of Ji-hun's burned cheek, of the old man in Seoul, of every person going about their day, unaware that their fate was being decided in this cold room. She looked back at Vexler. All pretense of subservience drained from her posture. She did not slouch, but she seemed to grow taller, sharper. The polite smile vanished, replaced by an expression of utter, chilling neutrality. "This is a most inhospitable proposal," she said, and her tone had changed. It was no longer soft, but clear and sharp as glass. "We must decline." The silence on the bridge was absolute. The hum of machinery seemed to fade. The officers stopped their work. No one had spoken those words to a herald in living memory. Vexler stared, his gray skin seeming to darken with fury. "What did you say?" "We decline," Yuna repeated, each word precise. "We will not dissolve our governments. We will not give you our people. We will not be your client." A ripple of shock, then amusement, went through the bridge crew. The human had gone mad. Vexler recovered, a storm gathering on his face. "You speak for a world that cannot back your words. This is not a negotiation. This is your reality. You have 12 hours. A formal declaration of submission, signed by your ruling council, transmitted on this frequency. If not," he gestured again. The hologram of Earth zoomed in on the Korean peninsula, on the dense, glowing city of Seoul. "We will vaporize this city from orbit. A demonstration. If you continue to resist, we will continue until you understand the reality of your situation." It was the ultimate threat. The destruction of millions of lives. A masterpiece of art and culture and humanity, erased in an instant to make a point. Kim Yuna did not look at the hologram of her home. She kept her eyes locked on Vexler. The fear, the anger, the desperation, she compressed it all into a core of frozen steel inside her. They had finally done it. They had finally crossed the one line humanity had drawn in the stars. "We have received your message," she said, her voice echoing in the quiet room. "You will have Earth's answer shortly." She turned, not waiting for dismissal, and walked back toward the transit point. No one stopped her. They were too stunned by her audacity, her suicidal pride. The light engulfed her, and she was gone. Back in the Alpine bunker, the atmosphere was electric. They had heard everything. Tae Min was pale. "They're going to bomb Seoul. They'll really do it." Yuna strode into the command center, the calm gone, replaced by a focused intensity. "Major Ji-hun, status?" Ji-hun's face appeared on the main screen, the faintest pink line now the only mark on his cheek. All units are at Ready State 1, Ambassador. The shield over Seoul is primed. They will not vaporize anything. They will try, Yuna said. And when they fail, they will escalate. We must escalate first. She sat in her command chair, her fingers flying over the controls. A global authentication sequence initialized. Dr. Tae-min, terminate the mimic field. Broadcast on all frequencies, the one we agreed upon. Tae-min took a deep, shaky breath, then grinned. This was the moment. He entered the final code. Across the planet, the complex network of projectors and emitters that had crafted the lie of a primitive Earth shut down. The veil dropped. Channel open, he said. Yuna leaned toward the microphone. Her voice would go to every human settlement, every ship, every hidden outpost. It would also be broadcast, unencrypted, directly to the Worldbreaker. This is Ambassador Kim Yuna to all human forces. The Galactic Imperium has threatened the unconditional surrender of our species and the annihilation of our cities. Her voice was clear, hard, and carried a weight of authority that had never been needed before. They have mistaken our courtesy for weakness. They have mistaken our patience for fear. That mistake ends now. She paused, her eyes blazing. Activate protocol. Polite refusal. I repeat, activate protocol. Polite refusal. Authorization Yuna Alpha Omega. May history forgive us for what we do next. She released the microphone and looked at the main tactical display. For a second, nothing changed. Then, the solar system woke up. On the bridge of the Worldbreaker, Vexler was still fuming, preparing the order to target Seoul, when the sensor alarms erupted in a deafening chorus. The main screen, which had shown a peaceful, undefended Earth, exploded with new data. Herald! The sensor officer screamed, his voice cracking. Massive energy spikes. Across the planet. In the asteroid belt. Lunar far side. Reading gravitational anomalies. Quantum signatures. It's a fleet. A hidden fleet? Vexler stared, uncomprehending. The pretty blue planet was suddenly bristling with weapons emplacements he had never seen. The geothermal plants in Iceland and the Pacific were emitting space-time distortion waves. The Art Museum in Paris was projecting a planetary shield matrix that was solidifying over Seoul and a dozen other cities. Hundreds of ships, sleek and dark and utterly silent, were powering up from behind asteroids, their drives giving off no heat signature. His sensors could understand that it was an illusion. It had to be. But every scan, every probe, confirmed it. The primitive, fractured, weak humanity was gone. In its place was a military and technological power of terrifying, hidden depth. Before he could form an order, before he could even think to fire, the main communication channel lit up. The face of Kim Yuna filled the screen. But it was not the polite, smiling ambassador. This was someone else entirely. Her gaze was like a physical force. Harold Vexler, she said, and her voice was the coldest thing he had ever heard. You mistook our manners for weakness. You mistook our patience for fear. You have threatened our home, our people. She leaned closer to the camera, and the sheer intensity in her eyes made him take an involuntary step back. This is Earth's message, she said, every word a hammer blow. We were just being polite. Until now. For 3 long seconds, the bridge of the Worldbreaker was a frozen painting of shock. Harold Vexler stared at the tactical display, his mind refusing to accept the data. The blue planet was now encircled by a web of light energy signatures, shield domes, weapon ports that had simply not been there moments before. His pride, his certainty, cracked like thin ice. Evasive maneuvers. He finally roared, the command tearing from his throat. All weapons, Target those hidden ships. Fire at will. But humanity did not fire. Not yet. The sleek, dark human vessels, designated Warden class by their own fleet, moved. They did not move like Imperial ships, with roaring engines and flaring plasma. They slid through space silently, pushed by gravity manipulators that left no traditional exhaust. They moved between the lumbering Imperial cruisers like shadows, too fast, too agile. They're not attacking. The weapons officer yelled. They're forming a net around us. It was true. The human ships were taking up positions, not to bombard, but to encircle. On the main viewer, Vexler watched as one of his own destroyers, the Glorious Intent, powered up its main plasma lance, targeting a human ship that drifted lazily in front of it. The lance fired. A torrent of star-hot energy it never connected. A shimmering hexagonal field of silver light appeared directly in the bolt's path. The plasma didn't splash or explode against a shield. It was absorbed, the energy seeming to drain away into nothing. The human ship hadn't even activated a full shield, just a localized, perfect energy sink, exactly where the shot would be. It was a display of defensive precision, so arrogant it was an insult. Then the human ship fired back. Not with plasma, or lasers, or kinetics. A pulse of deep blue light, silent and cold, lanced out and struck the Glorious Intent. There was no explosion. Instead, the destroyer's engine signature flickered and died. Its weapons systems went dark. Its lights dimmed. It was dead in the water, a floating hulk, completely disabled. Report! Vexler screamed. Neural disruption pulse. The science officer stammered. It targeted the ship's synthetic nervous system. It's a system kill. No structural damage, just off. Terror, cold and sharp, began to replace Vexler's fury. They weren't being destroyed. They were being switched off. Humiliated on the surface, the demonstration continued. The Imperium's ground forces, scattered at survey sites, suddenly found themselves trapped. In the German factory, the lights went out, and when they flickered back on, the human workers were gone. The large hangar door sealed with a final, resonant clang made of a material the Imperium scanners now identified as polycarbonate, a substance they used for starship hulls. The enforcers were locked in, their combs filled with static, their weapons useless against the suddenly impregnable walls. In Seoul. Around the square where Ji-hun had been struck, a soft, golden light descended from the sky. It was a dome, shimmering like honey, covering the entire city center. High above, the World Breaker fired its demonstration shot, the same powerful lance meant to vaporize the city. The energy beam struck the golden dome and spread across it in a silent, beautiful cascade of light, dissipating harmlessly into the atmosphere. The dome didn't even tremble. Below, people looked up, not in terror, but in awe. They had been told to trust. Now they saw why. Back in space, the true counterstrike began. It was not a military one. It was a hack. Dr. Park Tae-min in the Alpine bunker let out a whoop of triumph. They took the bait. The back door in their datacore is wide open. They downloaded our historical archives right into their primary tactical network. He sent the command. Across the Imperium fleet, control consoles flickered. Navigation systems recalculated, not to avoid collisions, but to cause gentle, precise ones. 2 frigates drifted slowly into each other, their shields deactivating at the last moment, resulting in a grinding crunch of metal that left both vessels tangled and helpless. The World Breaker's own primary weapon, the one that had targeted Seoul, began a powering down sequence that its engineers could not stop. Warning sirens blared, contradicting each other. The mighty flagship was having a nervous breakdown, infected by a digital virus hidden in human folk songs and historical documents. Vexler gripped the railing, his knuckles white. This was impossible. It was like being attacked by ghosts. Then the boarding parties came. Near the disabled Glorious Intent, a human vessel extended a simple physical airlock tube. It connected with a hiss. The Imperium troops inside the dead ship braced, weapons ready, expecting a brutal assault. What entered was Major Lee Ji-hun and a squad of 5 others, including Kang Soo-jin and Choi Min-soo. They wore form-fitting black combat suits, not bulky armor. They carried no visible guns. The Imperium troops fired. Plasma bolts filled the corridor. Ji-hun and his squad moved. They didn't run. They flowed. Their speed was a blur that hurt the eye. They ducked, weaved, and contorted around the bolts with impossible fluid grace. They closed the distance in a heartbeat. Ji-hun reached the lead enforcer with K-Val. The enforcer swung his powered fist, meant to crush bone. Ji-hun caught it. His bare hand stopped the powered armor fist cold. There was a sickening crack of metal, not bone. K-Val screamed. Before the sound ended, Ji-hun had plucked the force whip from the enforcer's belt, spun it once, and cracked it against the console next to him, destroying it. He dropped the whip at K-Val's feet. "You hit me with one of these," Ji-hun said, his voice calm, almost conversational. "I didn't like it." He didn't strike K-Val. He simply moved past him, his squad disabling the other soldiers with precise, non-lethal strikes to nerve clusters. They moved like surgeons, not warriors. In 2 minutes, the entire detachment was unconscious or groaning on the floor, utterly defeated without a single kill. Ji-hun walked to the ship's main comm panel. He plugged in a small device. The face of Ambassador Yuna appeared on every screen aboard the Worldbreaker and every ship in the fleet. "Harold Vexler," she said. Her image was steady, her eyes like chips of flint. "Look at your fleet. Look at your soldiers. Your weapons cannot touch us. Your shields cannot stop us. Your ships are toys in our space." On the bridge, Vexler watched as the feeds showed his mighty armada in disarray. Ships drifted, disabled. Others fired wildly, their shots absorbed or dodged by the silent human shadows. His ground forces were contained. His flagship systems were failing. The hologram of Earth now showed the planet wrapped in a shimmering net of human-controlled energy. "We do not wish to destroy you," Yuna continued, and the truth of it was the most terrifying part. They could have. By now, his fleet could have been molten slag. "Your aggression was based on a lie. You saw the face we showed the galaxy, a face of courtesy, of division, of weakness. It was a choice, a test. You failed it." She leaned forward. "You have one chance. Power down all remaining weapons. Recall all troops to their ships. Prepare for a neutral tow out of the Sol system. You will leave, and you will carry a message back to your Imperium." Vexler's body sagged. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a hollow, chilling understanding. They had never been the predators here. They had been mice, poking a sleeping dragon, thinking it a hill. The human ships stopped their movements. They hung in space, silent and dark, waiting. The invitation was clear. The alternative was unthinkable. On the bridge, all eyes were on Vexler. The proud herald, second voice of the Imperium, looked at the peaceful, deadly blue planet below, and then at the cold face of the human on his screen. He had never learned to surrender. But he had just learned, very quickly, what defeat was. He opened the fleet-wide channel, his voice broken and old. "All units. Stand down. Power down offensive systems. Prepare. Prepare for departure." The order echoed into the silent void. The galaxy's strongest had just been disarmed, not by brute force, but by a lesson. A lesson that started with politeness and ended with a display of power so complete it left no room for argument. The silence that followed the surrender was deeper than space. On the bridge of the World Breaker, Harold Wexler stood amidst the dimmed lights and silent consoles, feeling the shame like a physical weight. His crew moved slowly, quietly, inputting the commands to power down the last of their offensive systems. The human ships, those silent black shadows, did not approach. They simply watched, a perfect, motionless ring of judgment. The towing operation was not done with cables of metal. From the larger human vessels, beams of gentle blue light reached out, enveloping the Imperial ships in a stabilizing field. One by one, the mighty warships of the Imperium were turned, like sleeping giants being nudged, and pointed back toward the edge of the solar system. There was no violence, no hurry. It was a dismissal, an escort to the door. On the surface, the golden domes over the cities winked out. The hidden weapon ports slid shut, their facades of rock and earth sliding back into place. The people of Sol emerged, looking at a sky once again clear of threats. There was no cheering. A profound, weary relief settled over the planet. The performance was overdot in the Alpine Command Center. The tension bled away, leaving behind a hollow exhaustion. Dr. Park Tae monitored the departing fleet, his screens showing peaceful green signals. They're complying. All systems are dormant. They're just leaving. Ambassador Kim Yuna let out a long, slow breath. She had not realized she was holding it. Open a final channel to the World Breaker. Audio only. When the link chimed, Wexler's voice was flat, stripped of all its former power. We are departing, as demanded. What is your message for the Imperium? Yuna leaned back in her chair. The anger was gone. Now there was only a cold, clear certainty. You will tell them this. Tell them what you saw. Tell them that humanity sought only to live in peace, to greet newcomers with open hands. Tell them you mistook those open hands for emptiness. You were wrong. She paused, letting the words hang in the transmission. We built our strength not for conquest, but for survival. We hid it not out of fear, but out of hope that the galaxy might be a kinder place. You have shown us it is not. That changes nothing and everything. Your technology, Wexler said, the scientist in him overpowering the defeated herald for a moment. The gravity drives, the neural pulses, the bio-enhancements. They are not in any galactic record, and they will not be, Yuna replied. Our secrets are our own. You have learned the only lesson you need. Humanity's politeness is a choice. Our strength is not. Approach us again as a friend, with respect, and you will find none kinder. Approach us as a threat, and you will find none more terrible. The choice, Herald, will always be yours. Deliver that message in full. The channel closed with a soft click. The message was sent. The story was over. On the World Breaker, Wexler stared at the retreating image of Earth on the main viewer, a beautiful, terrible jewel. He thought of the human major catching the powered fist. He thought of the plasma bolt being swallowed by nothing. He thought of the calm, final voice of the ambassador. They had not just been defeated. They had been redefined. They were no longer the galaxy's strongest. They were the ones who had poked a creature they did not understand, and had lived only because it chose to let them live. It was a humbling that would scar his civilization for generations. Weeks later, Major Lee Ji-hun stood on a balcony overlooking a quiet, rebuilt section of Seoul. The scar on his cheek was gone, healed without a trace. Kang Soo-jin joined him, handing him a cup of tea. Quiet, she said. For now, Ji-hun replied, taking the cup. They'll talk. The whole galaxy will talk. Others will come. some curious, some arrogant. "And we'll be polite," Sujin said, a slight smile on her face. "Until we're not," Jian finished. He sipped his tea, looking at the peaceful city, at people living their lives, free and unaware of the machinery hidden in the bedrock below them, the ships slumbering in the silent dark beyond the moon. The mask was off, but it could be put on again. The choice was theirs. In his lab, Dr. Park Taemin was already working. The data from the Imperial systems was a treasure trove. Not of technology, theirs was crude by human standards, but of information. Star maps, species records, political boundaries. The galaxy was now a known place, full of potential friends and inevitable foes. His next project was not a weapon. It was a better mimic field, a better lie. The first contact package for the next visitors would be even more convincing, even more perfectly crafted to show exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Across Earth, life moved on, but with a subtle difference. People looked at the stars not with naive wonder, but with a knowing caution. They had met the galaxy, and they had set the terms. The secret, carried by every citizen, was a quiet confidence. They were not victims waiting in the dark. They were the guardians of the light, who knew how to be kind and when to be something else entirely. The last of the Imperial fleet passed the orbit of Pluto, escorted by the silent human wardens. Then the blue beams retracted. The human ships turned as one and glided back into the dark, disappearing as if they had never been. The Imperium ships were left alone, their systems slowly returning to their control. Pointed toward home, Vexler stood on his bridge, the jump coordinates for the nearest Imperial outpost set. He took one last look at the Sol system, a single star among billions. It looked peaceful. Innocent. He knew the truth now. Politeness was a weapon they had never learned to wield, and humanity had just given the galaxy a masterclass in its use. They were not just being polite, they were being merciful. And that, he realized as he gave the order to jump, was the most frightening thing of all. The stars stretched, and the world breaker fled, carrying its lesson into the void. Behind it, Earth hung in its cradle of space, silent, watchful, and polite, waiting for the next visitor to decide what kind of story they would tell together.